Saturday night. Get down the pedal and you get down the bow and you kick off your shoes. All right, all right. Welcome, everybody. It is time for another episode of Two Pastors, Their Guests, Keeping It Real. I'm your host, Brian Callies of Callies Ministries. My co-host, my buddy, my pal, Charles Matthews, is normally here with you, and he's just going to have to apologize and ask for your prayers. He's got a family crisis, so he's had to duck away for that. So prayers for Charles on that. And but it is Monday. We want to kick it off really strong, so we got a little kind of a Louisiana Saturday night kind of vibe going right now, and you can tell I haven't been fishing lately, but I wished I was. So, and I got an amazing guest on here with me today. You guys are going to love him to death. He's become a good friend, absolute wise counsel. So that my pastor always tells me is to go get wise counsel. And so I did just that. God put him in my life. He's with LongView Planning Partners, and he's just going to give us some really, really good guidance tonight and discussion about how our topic for tonight. Let me tell you what the actual topic is. How are you spending your time, or are you just floating along? And that's what we're going to talk about, is how you spend your time. How do you do it wisely? And you know, right now we're in the middle of all kinds of things. We've had a COVID thing. We've had everybody staying at home. We've had businesses turned upside down. And how are you planning? How are you spending your time? What are you doing with your time? So that and a lot of other things. But let me introduce my good friend, Cooper Smith. What do you say, Mr. Cooper?
Appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you for the kind words.
Man, well, shoot, with you, anything, man. He's become a confidant in my life. I think I get to. There's a few men, so men. That's what happens. Is every once in a while we get a couple guys in our lives we allow to speak into our lives and allow to really help us and guide us on things. And Cooper, even though you're younger than I am, you have mountains and mountains of knowledge and wisdom of things that I just don't know. So, man, I want to thank you for speaking into my life and be a blessing to me, buddy.
Man, I can't take any credit for that. It's been cool to see God work in each of our lives and kind of, the places that he's taken both of us and just kind of how our relationship has grown as time's gone on.
Amen. Amen. Well, so let's get started real quick on our topic. So our topic is about how are you spending your time? How are you investing your time? Tell me real quick before we get started, you just came back from an adventure of how you're spending your time. Can you give us a little insight on that real quick?
Sure, man. Got to escape the four walls of my home office for the first time in about 12 weeks. Went down with a buddy to Destin, Florida. Actually, it opened up, so we hung out for a couple of days down there. Then I was back home for 2 days. And then the next day, early that morning, we left, flew down to Austin, Texas. I helped that same buddy move out of his condo down there. He's actually moving back to Memphis. We spent 2 days moving and then made the long drive back from Austin, Texas to here. It's been a busy couple of days, but it was nice to switch it up a little bit.
Well, it was also, I mean, people right now, I think with everything that's going on, it's so easy to become narrow focused and one track focused. And we don't think about spending time with your friends and your buddies, even doing something to help them like that. My pastor's always told me that relationship is all about time and how you spend your time. And so good for you for doing that, man. I know who to call now if I'm going to get ready to move.
Yeah, if you need help moving, I charge by the hour. So, but to your point, man, really a lot of the thoughts behind this topic really came from the pandemic, right? And really just having a lot more time to think and reflect. And something that you said, really, I truly realized how intentional you have to be in every area of your life if you want growth, right? And that's been really one of the biggest things that I've been working through, right? Like areas of your life don't get better just on their own. It takes that intentional work, and that even includes the area of friends.
That's great. That is great. And you're right. You're right. Where you spend your time. So I don't know about you, but at some point in my life, I don't remember at what point, I started to equate value with things that I'm doing based on time. Seems like I never had enough time to do anything. So if I was going to carve out an hour for you, to me, it was easier to hand money to that situation than time.
Mm-hmm.
So time became a huge commodity for me that was precious for me. And to the point, even when I started doing stuff like tithing, I went to time rather than just money, because time was a lot more precious. It was really hard to carve that out. So,
yeah. You know, there's a quote that I like that says, you know, it talks about time, and it says you can't force anymore, but money you could go broke and earn it back. Right. So you can't replace time.
That's great. That's great. Well, I agree with you totally on that. So you were saying here in some of our notes and some of our discussion before, making time for personal growth, spiritual, mental, physical. Yeah. You said just a few minutes ago that growth really only comes from the things that you devote time to, devote energy to.
Right.
Is that right? Did I get that right? So
correct.
Let's talk about spiritual for just a minute, since that was the one of the top ones on the topic. And I know you and I've had some good spiritual discussions before.
Mm-hmm.
And what are your thoughts on, right now with the COVID thing, and we're not technically assembling in churches like we did before. So how have you refocused your spiritual focus? Have you adjusted that pretty well to?
Yeah. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. You know, when everything first happened, right, and all the news was coming out and no one really knew what the future would look like, I wasn't spending my time like I typically do, right? You know, I was giving in to a lot of the fear, a lot of the other things going on, right? And then I really had to take a second one day to think like, well, God's still in control, right? Even though all this stuff is going on, he still has a purpose in that. And it took me, honestly, probably about a week and a half after working at home to like really get back in the swing of it. You know, I felt like I was just, my time was just kind of getting wasted. Days were just kind of happening to me,
after the
was feeling unproductive.
After the shutdown, let's say. Is that what you were saying?
So this was like the first, you know, they sent us home really from work the first week of March. So started working at home then. And, you know, one of the things, somebody said something to me, the president of our firm got on a call and he was talking about routines, right? And something that he said made me think, you know, do you have a routine because you have places that you have to be every day, or do you have a routine because that's who you are, right? And I know for me, I would have liked it to be that second one, right? I didn't just want my life to happen to me, but I'm a very routine-oriented person, a very structured person, and I didn't have any of that structure. So I think that was really kind of God's way of testing me. And it's like, okay, well, you live the life that I've called you to live. When you have that routine, well, what does that look like when you don't have that routine? And I take that away from you and bring a new normal to you, right? So I think, you know, on the spiritual growth topic, you know, I was thinking about it. I couldn't think of another time in history that's happened where there are as little distractions as there were, right? So if you're looking for spiritual growth, right, what better time could we possibly ask for than what we just went through, right? And a lot of these are habits and things. You know, a lot of these topics tonight are ways that, you know, we really plan on spending our time after this, right? Kind of lessons that we've learned throughout this period of time, things that we hope to carry on afterward. You know, and I just really haven't had a period of solitude like that in my life. So that was really kind of one of the first couple thoughts that popped into my head as everything started to happen and everything started to get locked down.
Well, I agree with you. So in my world, I wished I had the latter of what you were talking about before. I wish I had deliberate direction of what my days and stuff are, but you get caught up into routine no matter what. And in my world, this was a welcome opportunity because it really made me stop and think about, you know, well, Brian, you didn't have to get up for 14 meetings today. So now if you're going to have a meeting, you got to be deliberate about it. And it's just do the ones that you think are productive and actually do something. And then that freed me up to do other things. And so I was really kind of thankful to have this as almost what's the word, sabbatical, in a way, a chance to step back and then kind of reassess. Because
Yep.
if I'm not careful, I'll spin my wheels in 100 things, and 50 of them are productive and 50 are not. And
Yep.
you know, I looked forward to it. I hated it at first, of course, right? Because it messes up your whole routine, and
Right.
you know, everything becomes just a mess. But I think God can do some of the greatest things in the middle of a mess, and things sometimes that we can't get to any other way without His help.
You know, and I listened to a sermon one time that talked about that. You know, God does all of His work in the dark, right? So that when He pulls you out into the light, you are who you're supposed to be, right? You even think about a butterfly, for example, right? When they have their growth and transformation is when they're inside of their cocoon, right? That they don't do that transformation outside of that. So they have to go into that dark period of time. And I think that that's really where God works on people in those dark moments, right? If our lives were easy and we had no problems, why would we feel like we need God?
Yeah.
And I think those tough times really bring us back to reality of how we're dependent on Him to even have the conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah. And to Mark, on what you were just saying, I know you're planning and that kind of stuff is what your career is. Then you'd know about the financial part of that. And in the financial, even on the financial part, to me, what the Bible says, you know, it's hard for a wealthy man to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's not because he's wealthy. It's just because a lot of times people who are wealthy, at least this is the way I see it, a lot of times people who are wealthy don't really have a lot of need. They're kind of soothing, and they're reliant, and they just don't really have a whole lot of need for God until some tragedy happens in their life. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, now I got to cry out to something because I can't solve this and the money can't solve this, all those things. And so, so I actually want to encourage everybody to take a moment to thank God also for allowing a storm in your life. I know that sounds really weird, but the storms are in my life when I look back, and a lot of the pastors that I know and a lot of the congregations that I know, just brothers, sisters, friends, that's where God made the biggest transformation. Look back in your life and figure out where He made the biggest transformations. When your life's been easy and they had no problems, or it's when, you know, something was a struggle and you kept going to Him for help. So I think that's really, really big. So you were talking about making sure that we plan. Are you the kind of guy that gets up in the morning and then you're going to get out your day planner and you literally plan out your day before it starts? Are you that guy?
No. But you probably laughed if you saw how a lot of my day was structured. So I like to have what I call my bookends to my days, right? Where my days beginning and end the exact same way. So typically my days start off at 5:30 in the morning. I'll wake up, normally have a protein shake, start the workout by about 6. I'll work out from about, fortunately have a home gym at the house, so it didn't have to go without the gym throughout all this.
Nice.
So we'll work out till about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Normally about 7:30, and I'll shower and get ready for work. And then I've actually, something that I started in one of my topics that I'll talk about later. There's been a guy that I've talked with, good buddy, brother in Christ of mine, James, and him and I have had daily accountability calls.
Okay.
And that's just really how we started out. Yeah. So that was, man, it's, talking about how you and I got connected, just so interesting to see God work in so many different ways, right? This is a guy that worked up at the front desk at the gym that I go out to in Collierville. My dad had actually seen him up there reading his Bible one time at the front and just told me, hey, I think this would be a cool guy for you to connect up with. And him and I had lunch. We're the same age, come from different walks of life, right? But the things that we had in common was just too similar for it not to be God, right? And kind of the areas that we were in, the things that we struggled with, our strengths, we were all, pretty in tune with each other. And we met for the first time prior to all this. kind of coming to one of the points about how we spend our time, right? I think what's important to have in your life is something called guardrail relationships, right? Every day is tough. You know, every day brings a completely different set of problems on its own, right? So it's important to have people in your life that are going to lift you up on those days where you need lifting up, right? Because it's pretty much impossible to be operating at 100% every single day all the time.
So was that what you were referring to as a guardrail relationship? Somebody that is there to help you stay on track? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. So if you think about, you think about a highway, right? And you're driving down the highway, and there's, the lanes are on the highway, and then you have a little bit of space in between those lanes, and then you have the guardrail after that, right? And the guardrail is supposed to just keep you in that path. Sometimes you may shift out of the lanes a little bit, but you can't get further than what that guardrail is. So these are really people that you have in your life that will be honest with you, shoot you straight, call you out on things that you need calling out on, and then give you guidance, right? And in this instance, spiritual guidance, right? All biblical guidance of, okay, here's what you need to do to get back on track. Here's how you should be living your life.
I love that. So an accountability partner. So you're pretty honest with your accountability partner, I guess.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think that's, go ahead.
If you're struggling with something, you have some freedom to go ahead and just be as honest as a heart attack with.
And man, I think that's key. I'm a big statistics person. There's a Harvard study that they did that said you're 44% more likely to achieve a goal if you have that goal written down.
Yeah.
That number goes up. You're 77% more likely to achieve a goal if you share that goal with somebody and you have them hold you accountable to it. So you increase your chances of success in any given area by 77% just by having somebody that helps keep you accountable.
Wow. Well, that's actually really, really great.
So that was really the whole purpose of, and I guess kind of take a step back a little bit, right? One of the big things that helped keep me on track throughout this whole thing, our president, he's a very godly man, doing things the right way, president of our firm. And he was talking about how he stays in line. And this is a guy who's, still pretty young. And, you could argue that he's successful in every area of your life, right? Godly man, family man, has a successful business. And he went through kind of what he does to stay on track. And so he actually has a personal scorecard where he has his life broken down into every area, spiritual, health.
Wow.
Yeah. So he sent out like a general framework of what his scorecard looked like. And I actually implemented that in my own life. And James, the man I spoke about earlier, he did that as well. So that was how the conversations really first started off, is we would go through our scores with each other, right? So I've kind of have my main key areas of importance in my life. I have goals in every specific area. And then what the scorecard does is it tracks those specific tactics to see how I'm doing on that goal.
Okay. That sounds like something I need to do. That's a great idea. See, I told you guys he's going to give wisdom. See, look at there.
But again, man, I can't take credit for any of it. But it made a huge impact, man. And that really keeps you on track. And going back to the first conversation that we had, you got to stay intentional in all those areas, right? If you aren't, what I realize is you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards, right? It's pretty hard to stay neutral in the middle. Typically, if there's not forward progress, that means you're regressing.
Amen to that. I agree with that. So that's what actually one of our mantras on the show is: try to get, one step closer to God every day. It doesn't have to be a big step. It just has to be a step, just because otherwise, sitting still doesn't work well, and you backsliding is a huge thing. And what I mean by that is not just, I don't mean just go to church. I mean, just get a step closer to God. Pray a little more today. Pray about something for real. Not these pointless prayers where your mind's wandering in 15 different directions, but a real talk. Or study something that'll help you stay on topic or in focus. But, just to devote a little bit of time, and time is, again, what we're talking about here today on the show, is how we devote our time. And, and you have to be intentional about it. You can't just kind of float around. And again, that's I'll put myself on the hot plate on that. is I'll usually go to the fire that's burning the hottest, and
Yeah,
I'll
right, of course.
I'll work on that one. And then if I'm lucky, I'll have most of them knocked out by the end of the day, if I'm lucky. And that's kind of unfortunately how my plan has been prior to all this COVID stuff, prior to all this staying at home and everything getting turned upside down as far as work goes, is I've just gotten into this habit of putting out fires left and right, and start with the biggest ones and start putting them out. And that's kind of what I end up doing a lot of times. And I think this is a great opportunity, because now we're able to actually stop for a minute and focus on, all right, what do I want to spend my time on? My pastor taught me a neat trick. I thought this was really clever, and I've heard it a bunch of different ways, but basically if you take a vase or a bowl or bucket and you start putting rocks in it, right, there's only so many rocks you're going to put in. So if you start off with the little ones and you put all the little ones in, and then when you get to the end, you can only put a couple big ones in because you don't have any more room left. But if you flip that around and you put all the big ones in first, and then the smaller ones find holes where the big ones were, and then the sand at the end follows in and it follows holes. You can pack so much more into a vase when you always try to focus on the important things first, and you have to mentally prepare yourself to do that. So, start off your day, all right, this is what I'm going to focus on, not just everything, but I'm going to focus on this, and this. And then the phone calls that come in and some of those other things will fill in those little cracks in between, and they don't become the biggest focus. I always thought that was a really clever way to look at it.
That's really good, man. And something that kind of provokes some thought, like where that starts is you actually have to take time to think about what is important to you, right? Because if, I would make an assumption that on those days where you feel like you're putting out fires, you really aren't spending a whole lot of time thinking about what your priorities are, because you're just going to that next thing.
Yep.
Right. And that's really what a lot of this whole pandemic situation helped me realize, was how quickly you can waste an entire day, right? 30 minutes here, 1 hour here, right? And you aren't in any better of a spot than you were when you started the day, right? You just got some tasks accomplished. But I think there's so many other things that are important in life, right? And it's all tied together. I've heard it compared to like a wagon wheel with different spokes in the wagon wheel, right? And if you have one of the spokes out of the wagon wheel pulled out, then it's not going to roll like it's supposed to. And I really think that's a lot of what my purpose and mission of even being on this earth. There's a book that I read called The One Thing. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. I believe it's written by a guy named Brian Keller. But what the whole concept of the book is talking about is that if you look at the most successful people in the world, right, they figure out what brings them the most passion, the most energy, and they devote all their time, effort to whatever that thing is, right? So that really challenged me. I feel like I juggle a lot of different balls. So I had to think, well, what is my one thing, right? And I determined that it's bringing as many people as possible peace, right? Not just financial peace because of the nature of my business, but on top of that, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, right? They all tie together, right? If you have lots of money, but your health is terrible, then what good is the money, right? If you got health and money, but your faith is dead, like what type of life is that, right? So, I think that the spiritual piece is definitely the most important, but all these things are woven together, right? And I think, it's just a concept of living, they talk about a balanced life. I don't really think there's a balanced life. I think it's more of a counterbalanced life, right? There's going to be periods of time where some areas are needed to be more weighted heavily than others. Because I don't know if a balanced life exists.
That is really a clever thing. Well, I'll be honest. So let me just ask you. So do you start off your day with these priorities, or is it a daily priority task? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So it's a daily thing. So I'm going through and reviewing like, okay, well, what are my big goals, right? So I have my tactics broken down in the scorecard, but then it's like, okay, well, what are the big goals, right? Why do I execute these tactics? So I'm going through those daily and just kind of reminding myself, okay, well, here's your why, right? They say discipline will only take you so far. What really drives you is the why you do what you do. So for me, that kind of reminds me of my why at the beginning of the day, so that things just don't become checking a box, right? I don't ever want things in my life to become checking a box. Like there's a reason why these things are on my scorecard.
Okay, I see. And then family has to fit in there somehow, right? So is that one of your like one of your boxes then, or do they just fit in
It
between?
is. Yeah. So that's one of my areas. So like my big areas in no particular order are physical, spiritual, career, friends, relationship, family, and emotional. So I really have all these things broken down, and have a couple different tactics for each one of those. And then I have like an outside goal that those stem from.
And then you rate each one of those from 1 to 9 or 1 to 10?
So what I did is I tried to think about like what, if I have these goals or like if my goal in the spiritual category is to be as closely connected and have as intimate relationship as possible with God, right? Okay, well, that's my goal. Well, what does that look like, right? What are things that are tangible that I can track that would put me on track to have that goal, right?
So that's not just a big
thing.
The global thing, but you actually break it down to be practical and how to achieve the goal.
Correct. Because
Okay.
these are things that you have to be able to track. Yeah, and that you could report it to somebody. I didn't want it to be something that only I determine in my own head. I wanted it to be something where somebody else could look at my scorecard and be like, hey, well, you haven't been doing these things in this area, so that must mean you're underperforming. And actually what the scorecard does is I track it week over week, and then it actually throws it into like a bar graph that shows like what my percentages are in each area. And it's crazy, man. I can feel it, right? Like if I don't execute my tactics in a certain area, I definitely can feel that in my life without even seeing the percentage score.
Wow. So you notice that later and how it affects your life. And what's cool is if you did it the way you're doing it, which I'd love to get a copy of that, by the way,
Definitely.
is it would be neat that you have that accountability partner to help you to kind of go through that. And do you guys share that with each other is what you do then to see where you stand, and they give kind of some encouragements in certain areas and that kind of thing? Dude,
yeah, and it's brilliant. One of the things that's nice too is just seeing that other people struggle as well, right? I think that was, I talked to a lot of people throughout this pandemic, some more positive than others, but what I realized was that everybody has tough days, right? And the difference between people that are successful and people that aren't are they learn and grow from whatever those tough times are, right? And don't just wallow around in whatever's going on.
And the thing that I love about like on this show where we talk with each other, trying to learn from each other, is somebody taught me that you can. There's only two ways to learn. You can learn from the school of hard knocks yourself, go through all the bad things yourself, or you can learn from somebody who's been there and done that, and you can learn that you don't have to put your hand on top of a stove because it's hot. Because this other goofball already tried it, and he can tell you it's hot. If you can learn that way,
right?
Then that's really smart. And that's something I think that we're trying to really do on the show. And I want to thank you for coming on to help us to get that. Again, guys, two pastors and a guest, got an amazing guest with us today. Cooper Smith, LongView Planning Partners, and he has spoken into my life countless times trying to improve my planning ability, but not just planning for financial stuff. But, we're talking about today, it's more about planning for happiness, planning for joy and success and things in your life that you really want to have. And those things take effort. They don't just magically happen. Am I on the right track there, Cooper?
Man, you're exactly on the right track. And another quote, and again, sorry to keep saying quotes, but I think that's quotes really embody kind of thoughts and feelings for me, right? And it was a book that I read, and it talks about life being a juggling act. And it says you have 5 different balls: work, family, health, friends, and integrity. Work is a rubber ball. If you drop the ball, it will bounce back up. The other 4 are glass balls. If you drop them, you can't really avoid them being scuffed, chipped, or possibly even broken.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're going to take just a quick shout out for our charity shout out for today. And you guys are watching Two Pastors and a Guest. We're going to do a charity shout out. Is with Saving Lost Kids. This is a organization, and what you're seeing right now is their Facebook page. And Saving Lost Kids organization I get behind. I'm really, really strong in promoting it. I know Cooper is as well. Basically, we work on missing, exploited, and sex trafficking of children by trying to prevent all that bad stuff from happening by education, awareness, and prevention. We're going to go out there and try to stop it from happening. But one of the best things that we have right now, and I want to make sure we all get a chance to do this, is you're looking at the Facebook page, and it's just so simple. You guys are already on Facebook, or if you're not on YouTube, hop over to Facebook real quick. Check this out. So Saving Lost Kids, our little tag there is Saving Lost Kids, all one word. And when you go there, you'll see that we're always posting in our area kids that are missing from our area that are relevant. They just went missing, or they're missing in the really close vicinity. There's a great chance that they're probably still in this area. And the way that you're going to discover that, the way we're going to find those kids that are missing, is pretty much by their picture. The picture is what really matters. Not a lot of people pay attention to all the demographic stuff of, you know, they were this tall and they were this much weight and they were this skin color. What they're going to always look at is that picture. And the only way that this really gets out is by people like you sharing that. So if you would, it's really simple, you know, come over here, you can say something if you'd like, prayers for, that kind of thing, but hit the share button and you can share that on your page or your profile. Let me get rid of that. And that way it gets out to as many people as possible. The way we do it on ours, there's a girl right now that we're going to focus on. We just posted this about 4 hours ago. So this is a 15-year-old missing from Afton, Tennessee, not too far from here. Her name is Natalie Zamorano Gilbert. Last seen on May 22nd. So she's most likely still in this area. Remember, she's a 15-year-old girl. And the reason that it's so important that we get this out and we get this shared so quickly is because predators are just constantly looking. So if we're not looking for them, the predators are. And the odds are that sex traffickers a lot of times will approach children that are missing or run away within 48 hours. There'll be at least 50% is what most of the numbers say within 48 hours. So the predators are looking for targets and kids like this. So we need to keep our eyes open, share that information with the local police department, and let's see if we can't get her home. So again, Saving Lost Kids, if you're interested in making a donation, just text SLK for Saving Lost Kids, SLK to 41444, and you can become part of the team that'll help and to make a difference in this situation of missing, exploited, and sex trafficking of children. Thank you for that. And so we are back to the show. It is two pastors, their guests, keeping it real. I've got an awesome guy, keeping it real, friend of mine, Cooper Smith. He's with LongView Planning Partners. And we're talking today about you got to plan, you got to be intentional about your plans. You need to, if you want success in your life, and you want joy in your life, and you want spiritual health, and you want all these kind of things, you have to be intentional about it. You have to make some plans. And he was talking about accountability partners. That's something none of us want to talk about. So accountability partners, what a great concept. So do you have accountability partners? In other words, somebody that you can be upfront and honest with, and they can out you when they see something in your life that isn't exactly right. And they can talk to you to try to help encourage you to get into a better place. So that's pretty much my understanding of an accountability partner. Is that what you're getting at, Coop?
Yep, you got it. You got it right on the head, man.
So that's something I think we all need to grow in. It's something I need to grow in. And Cooper, you were saying how you actually have a list that you come up with of the things that are important, and you kind of rate yourself to how you're doing in these areas. And can you give us those categories one more time for our audience?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So let's see those categories. We've got physical, spiritual, career, friends, relationship, family, and emotional. In no particular order. You know, and really something that you said made me think of this. You know, I've heard before that the earthly definition of hell is your last day on earth, you meet the person that you could have become.
Okay, say that again. Hold on, let me get this.
Yeah. So you're on your last day on earth, right? Before you go up to heaven, right? Mm-hmm. You meet the person that you could have become.
That's deep. That is deep. Explain.
Man, and honestly, that scares me, right? Like if you think about, you know, your last day on earth, you meet this guy, you know, he's in shape, his family loves him, he's obedient to God, he's kind with every moment of his time, right? And then you look at kind of where you feel like you are, and you think about the missed opportunities, right? And the heaven impact that you could have on other people's lives because you weren't the person that you could have become. There's a Jim Rohn quote that I like, and it talks about your level of success will never exceed your level of personal development, because success is something that's attracted to the type of person you become. So really, you know, all this, the whole point of any of this stuff is just trying to figure out, like, what does God have planned for my life, right? I don't want to miss the call and miss out on potentially impacting somebody else's life through him, because I wasn't obedient, or because I was lazy, or because I wasn't prioritizing my time well. So that's the whole point of even doing all this in the first place, right? Because it can seem exhausting having a scorecard and accountability, right? It can feel like a weight, but then again, you have to go back to your why. And if this is to have that heaven impact here on earth, then it's worth it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And forgive me, I got so caught up into our awesome conversation, and my co-host isn't on here with me today, that I totally forgot to go and check out how we're doing on our comments. So I'm gonna do that here just real quickly and hop on so that we can see our comments for today. See if anybody's got any. So if you got any questions or comments, something we want to ask specifically to Cooper, make sure you like the page and then put your comments down there, and we'll make sure to get to him. If it's after the show, we'll make sure that we get them to him as well. And there it is. All right. And so I wanted to ask you, you said one of the things we talked about earlier is making time to be at peace. Wow, that's hard.
This one might be the hardest one for me.
So making time to be at peace. I always think of peace myself usually as now I don't have to think about time. I don't have anybody pulling on me or something like that. So now all of a sudden I have time to just zen for a minute. I don't know that I ever take time to focus on that peaceful place. So you can tell us a little bit about insight on how to do that, accomplish that?
Man, again, it just takes that being intentional, right? But I felt like, you know, prior to all this, I was, you know, going from meeting to meeting, talking from person to person to person, really didn't ever have time to sit and reflect, right? And enjoying personal growth as much as I do. I felt like every second of my life had to be spending time growing in a certain area, right? And I completely neglected the fact that you grow in those moments of peace. You know, I feel like we live in a society today where you have to constantly be stimulated, right? When I don't have anything going on, my first thing is take out my phone and see what's going on there. Check my emails, check my texts, check Facebook. And going back to wasting days, right? You can waste an entire day just by doing that. So I think for me, you know, with having all these other outside distractions stripped away from me, I was thankful for those moments where nothing was going on, right? Where the TV wasn't on, no one was over, there wasn't anything going on. God just granted me a time of peace in my life. So just taking time to acknowledge that and not always feeling like I have to be doing something or be stimulating my mind. Yeah.
Well, that's my time of doing that is first thing in the morning. So maybe a habit, but when I wake up, I don't spring out of bed. I'll spend time. That's where I think, and that's where I try to make my plans for today. And that's where I try to look at the emails and see where that's going, if there's pockets of opportunity. Cause I do a lot of disaster recovery stuff and a lot of emergency things. So when people hand those to me, those are kind of a priority, but I kind of weed through that. And then I figure out, all right, so this is what I've got today. I've got 4 hours of time. All right, let's be strategic about it. And I swear peace is never one of those. You know, it's not. Peace is, like I said. So I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint of my life. I'm a total train wreck. You'd never want to be my accountability partner with this. So last night I finally got some freedom This is what, Sunday night. So I finally got some freedom and said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and put some work stuff in. And I had to redesign my own station for the first time. I actually get to work on my own stuff. And I worked on this and it didn't work, and this didn't work. And I'm putting this all together, and it was all said and done. I stopped at 6:45 this morning. And because once I get going, I'm like a train. I don't want to stop, because if I stop, I won't be able to pick back up. And so that's my opportunity. I didn't have a lot of people pulling on me at 3 a.m. So I'm 6:45, man. That's when I quit. But then you think, oh, wow, he got so much done. And I did. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, well, at some point I've got to go to bed. So now I end up going to sleep for like 4 hours from 8 to 12. Well, I just lost my morning. So
that's the piece of the balance, right?
I guess.
Sleep.
There wasn't a lot of planning theory into it. It was just, look, I got an opportunity. Let's do this. And so I wished I was a little bit more in the planning phase. And so thank you for encouraging me in that, because that's what a little bit of an accountability is now, I'm seeing something, what Cooper's doing, that seems wise and seems logical, and it seems productive and fruitful. So in order to me to have some of that, I'm going to have to adapt some of that into my life and make some changes of, all right, well, let's try to implement a couple of these things. And so that's all that I'm going to encourage for the viewing audience. We don't want you to radically change everything in your life. What we're going to do is do a step or two closer to all these things in health. I don't know if you know this, Cooper. Well, you probably do. I started a health journey, right, about three weeks ago. All right.
Yep.
And we're seeing how this goes before I talk to the whole viewing world about this. So I started off, again, I didn't really even care about my weight. I got so many other irons in the fire. That's the last thing I'm even thinking about. But the doctor had to tell me, well, Brian, you're going the wrong direction, right? You grow every so many months, you're getting heavier, and then your sugar's getting a little high, and your blood pressure is starting to get a little high, and all these things are going the wrong direction. So you just need to change that trajectory and go down.
Right.
And, you can do it stupidly like I do by hitting a wall that's like, well, if you don't do something, you're going to get in trouble. Or you can just be smarter and take a couple little steps and be headed the other direction. I now had to jump on something pretty serious. Well, I chose to jump on something pretty serious, and got 3 health coaches on the show, and they came up with a plan and a concept, and it's a little more aggressive of a plan, but it worked. It's working. I've lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks, so I get to still eat a ton of awesome food. It's not like I'm starving myself. Yeah. If you guys ever check out the Facebook stuff, you'll see I'm constantly showing recipes about stuff, but it was just changing little things has made the biggest improvement. So, for example, I love pizza. And they said, well, so your concept, Brian, was to eat pizza at, 9 o'clock at night whenever you quit, and you're going to eat a pizza. Well, it'd been a lot better just take that pizza and eat one pizza every hour, one slice every hour, and it'd been a lot healthier for you. Well,
let me ask you this. Go ahead.
It would have been a smart idea. I mean, little thing, but
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
How do you, outside of just your weight, right? Do you feel a difference in your life? Energy, sleep, mood?
Oh gosh, yeah. So the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that they talked about was adjusting your life by, again, planning. And you're supposed to have 6 meals a day. And I said, if I eat 6 meals a day, I'm going to be as big as a house. I can't eat 6 meals a day. I eat 2, maybe, if you're lucky. I'll do 1 if I can help it. And they said, no, you eat 6 meals a day. I said, okay, this is going to be horrible. And I get up, and now it turns out after that first week, everybody I've talked to says the same thing. Man, I got a lot more energy. I feel better. I'll tell you this, 2 weeks in, I woke up, I was in the bed still in the morning, and I couldn't believe how good I felt. And it's one of those weird things. Sometimes you don't know that you're sick until you feel better and you realize, oh crap, I guess I was feeling bad before. I didn't know I felt bad until I started feeling good. And then I'm like, so I had to tell my wife, I said, I don't know if there's drugs in some of these things where, because they have like little supplementals, and I'm thinking, I don't know if it's drugs in there or what, but it's not. It's all health food. But I feel good, and I don't know how to describe it. I really feel happy. I feel
it's
a relief.
yeah.
It's so weird.
I can completely agree with that, man. And I think that's why I am so focused on eating right and exercising, because I can tell, you know, being out of town this last week, I didn't eat like I should have, right? I was a little bit sleepier coming after the trip, right? Like I can immediately tell a difference. And for me, that's part of the balance wheel, right? Like if my health is off, or I can't do the other things as well as I would have, right? How do I expect to serve others to the top of my capacity if I'm not giving my body the fuel that it needs? So that the health piece to me is huge, right? Now I joke and tell people I'm trying to live till I'm 200 years old, right? So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But man, that's a catalyst to me for just so many other things. You think you have more clear thoughts. The health piece is huge. And to your point, I didn't even realize, like I felt like a new person, right, when I started doing this. And you wonder like, wow, why does everyone not do this? But then is exactly what you said. You don't realize you were sick until you're better.
Yeah. I mean, you can live through it maybe, but the other thing is that God showed me is, well, Brian, I got a lot of work I can have you do. And if you die at 45, that's the end of the work I'm going to be able to have you do, because, you know, you're just headed towards a train wreck going to happen.
Yeah.
And it didn't take much. I'm not doing I'm doing something a little radical, but like in your world, well, I'm going to work out a little in the morning and I'm going to eat better. That's not rocket science. That's not the biggest thing.
It's the compound effect. That's all that it is, right? The slow changes over time, right? The slightest adjustment in your daily routine can dramatically alter the outcome of your life. Just the smallest little thing. And I think with a lot of that, you know, one of the other big things, it's good to have accountability partners, but it's also good to take extreme ownership of everything that's going on in your life, right? There's another quote that I like that says, what stands between you and your goal is your behavior.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So
you think about any goal that you have, right?
I'll leave, I know we're talking about planning and I think that's super, super smart, but let me also tell the viewing audience this idea. And this isn't just something for a pastor. I mean, I know I've got the term pastor up there, but the concept is that I'll just share something with you that God showed me. Hey, Brian, you got 2 ways to live your life. And I thought to him, like, right or wrong. He goes, no, 2 ways to live your life. So 2 ways to follow me is what he was telling me. You can make your own plans and schemes and ideas, or you can try to find out what my plans, schemes, and ideas are for your life. And I will tell you the difference of that is radically night and day. And so there are parts of my life that I have a responsibility, and I fail at that responsibility a lot of times, to plan being smart, like what Cooper's trying to help me to get tonight is, you know, financial, being smart about thinking about the future, food, and being smart about how you eat. We're talking about time, how we spend time with family and relatives and friends. Oh my goodness. I got plenty I can learn from that. But there's also a planning thing that God has for your life. And I'll tell you how that radically changed my world. Tell you about a story out of the Bible, the way he told me. So Peter and Jesus were going up to this synagogue to pray. They had to give their little temple tax, their $20 to get in the door. And they didn't have $20 at the time. And so I don't know what Peter was planning on hoping Jesus would do, just magically make it appear probably, or something crazy. But remember, they had thousands of people following him at the time. And what I would have done is turn around to the thousands of people that were following and say, hey, can somebody loan me $20? Or everybody put in a nickel and we'll have enough. But Jesus's brilliant plan was to tell Peter, I want you to go take a fishing pole, even though you're used to big boats and nets and stuff. Take a fishing pole, go walk down to the lake, and the first fish you're going to catch, it's going to have enough money shoved in its mouth. You can walk back over here and pay this tax. And to me, that was the silliest, crazy, dumbest plan I'd ever heard in my entire life. And if I was the one having to play that out, the only way I would have played that out, if anybody would have came up to me and said, Brian, where you going? I wasn't going to dare tell them the truth. I'm going to go catch a fish with money in it so that we can get, I mean, you wouldn't do it. But in order to play that out, though, you would have had to have faith, the belief that, all right, there's a plan here. I may not understand it, I may not get it, but I know it's a plan that was put in front of me. I have to follow this, and the only way I can follow it is by faith. That is what God used to help me to understand that there are also things in our lives that he has a plan for your life as well. And to me, that originally was a balance, because you don't easily just want to give in to something you don't understand completely. Most of the plans he gives you, he doesn't give you the whole ball of wax and tell you the whole steps.
Unfortunately, not. No, I wish he did, but
yeah,
doesn't.
Good luck with that, and just keep coming to me, and I'll keep getting you to the next step. But that's that faith part that has to come into play. So somehow, in amongst all these plans, we have to have that going to God and asking him what his plan is for our life, and trying to follow that too. Any insights on that one?
Man, I think that's the most important part, right? And again, that goes back to, that's why I do all this. You know, I think a lot about perspective, right? I think it's good to have perspective in everything that you do, right? And in all this, I try to take time to think about, will this matter in 1,000,000 years?
Oh, that's good.
If no, that right? And you think about that, right? That's everything earthly won't be around, right? Our lives, we won't, you know, me personally, I won't be around here on earth in 1,000,000 years, right? So if you think about that, okay, well then the only thing that matters is heaven, right? And what that next life looks like, and what those treasures look like in the next life. And I'm desperately trying to figure out what that is, right? You know, they talk about the first seat when you get up to heaven is whether or not you make it into heaven or not. And then the second seat is kind of what your role is in heaven, right? And selfishly speaking, right, I want to have lived a life where, you know, God or Jesus can look at me and say, okay, this one was responsible with what I was giving him. Here's what your role is in heaven, right? So all of this, the whole purpose of any of this is trying to figure out, like, who has he called me to be, right? That drives all this, because just on my own, I wouldn't be able to do any of this myself. And that's really the reason why I do this, right? Is I spent a lot of my life trying to live that life on my own, right? Grew up going to church and all that. You know, went off to college, and it really wasn't as big of a spiritual growth really wasn't a big focus for me, right? And I saw kind of where that got me in my life, right? I felt anxious, alone, right? Despair was really a word, right? And it got to a certain point where God spoke to me, and he said, look, you got two paths. You could either continue down this path that you're living on, and you're either going to end up, you know, living a miserable life or dead, or you break off tomorrow, you live the life that I called for you, and I'll take care of the rest. And man, I'll tell you, the peace and joy that I have in my life since making that turn is completely indescribable and better than anything else I have ever encountered in my life. And that's something that I only experience when I follow that path that you were talking about right there. When I try to do it on my own, man, I immediately start feeling that anxiousness, right? But the moment that you realize that you aren't in control of any of it, right? And you and I having this exact conversation right now is the exact conversation that God wanted us to have in this exact moment.
Oh, yes.
For me,
yes,
right? That's the only thing that gives me peace is knowing that wherever I am, whatever I'm going through, whoever I'm talking to, whatever, anything, right? God uses all of it. And that gives me peace.
Amen. And you're right. You know, and we were talking today about, you know, trying to be intentional and deliberate and plan for things, and trying to plan for peace is one of the ones we were talking about there last. And something I think I need to focus on a little bit more. But right now, I'm so thankful that we have this opportunity to try to rethink our lives a little bit. I mean, everything is kind of upside down if you're a small business like me anyway. You know, everything kind of changes at this moment. And so, Cooper, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today and for coming on, man. I knew God's had something strong to talk about through you, and always been a blessing in my life, buddy. And
you too, brother.
And
Appreciate you having me
for
on, man. I
saving
really
those kids and trying to all that you're doing to help with on that. So again, guys, two pastors and their guest, keeping it real. We're keeping it real today with Cooper Smith. And Cooper, if somebody wanted to get your insights, guidance, support, that kind of thing, what would they do? How would they get in touch with you? Can you share some contact
Sure.
information?
Yeah. So probably the best thing, you could just send an email to my personal email. It's just Cooper, COOPER .Ryan, RYAN .Smith @gmail.com. Send me an email. I'm always happy to sit down, have a phone call, have a Zoom call, meet in person. These type of conversations, right? I really enjoy the deep, meaningful conversation, right? I really don't enjoy surface level stuff as I do just diving in, right? I think that this is what life's about.
Amen. Amen. So remember, we're all on this journey together in life, and we're trying to get one step closer, better in the different areas like we talked about today, everything from health to spirituality and that kind of thing. And on this show, we're always trying to get you at least one step closer to God. So pray for you on that. Cooper, would you mind praying us out? We don't do
Sure.
that normally on every show, but would you mind praying for
Yeah.
somebody today who is maybe struggling right now with the balance of things? Maybe some of the things that you spoke to them might help them to get to that next level, that next place. Would you mind?
I'd be happy to, man.
Awesome.
Dear Heavenly Father, just thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for the many things that you blessed us with that we don't take time to acknowledge. Thank you for giving us life, for giving us breath. Thank you for waking us up in the morning. Thank you for giving us the ability to just have another day to glorify you. We thank you that you sent your son to die on the cross for us, so that you could view us like you viewed him. We come to you with nothing but gratitude. We ask you, Lord, to just be with our country right now, be with those who are struggling. Just keep your arms wrapped around them. Just give them the comfort and peace that only you can give them. Please help open people's eyes and their hearts to what you would want them to see and to know. Lord, just help strengthen those that are struggling right now. Be with those. Just continue to strengthen them in the areas of love, Lord.
Yes.
We ask you that you just be with us, keep our city safe. We ask you that you be with our leaders, and help us to have a good rest of our night. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Cooper, man. Again, you guys are watching two pastors and their guests keeping it real. We got Cooper Smith, LongView Planning Partners. Tomorrow, we're going to have an amazing show. We are going to have Police Director, I think it's Police Director Rawlings is going to be on the show. Memphis Police Director Rawlings. Right now, there's some turmoil, so I imagine that's most likely what the topic's going to be. We're going to probably do a little project or topic shift, because we're still seeing some of those things in the protests and those kind of things. And so I imagine he's going to want to talk about that. So we're going to do a little shift on that and try to move the topic probably to that. But Director Rawlings from the Memphis Police Department will be on tomorrow right here, 7 o'clock. Make sure you like the page, share it to some of your friends, put some comments in here for Cooper, and hopefully we just flood his inbox, and I'll just keep him going to him, and he can respond to you accordingly. I also want to give special thanks to Brian Callies Ministries for supporting the show and for building that. Charity shout out, Saving Lost Kids. Remember, savinglostkids.org, or you can text donation to SLK. Text SLK to 41444, and we will see you tomorrow. Bless you. Thank you again, Cooper.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Kids get fed. Me and the woman gonna sneak out to bed. Gonna have a little fun when we turn out the light. Louisiana Saturday night. You get down the pedal and you get down the bowl, and you kick off your shoes and you throw them on the floor. Dance in the kitchen till the morning light. Louisiana